Welcome to Launch, the GCC podcast. I'm your host, Marty Duren, Director of Communications for the Great Commission Collective. We're a global network of churches partnering together to plant churches and strengthen leaders. My guest today on Launch is no stranger to many of you. His name is John Crabtree. He's the Director of Training for the Great Commission Collective. We're going to be talking today about what he does for GCC, but also what he can do for you, specifically through our Learning Center. So this is not a new endeavor, but a lot of people are still not quite familiar with it. And coming on the heels of the LEAD conference, a lot of stuff that's on the Learning Center will become critically important to what we're doing as a collective of churches. And so I wanted to have John on today so that he can explain a little bit about what he does and how it can benefit you, especially through our Learning Center. So here's my conversation with John Crabtree. I'm joined today on this episode of Launch by a good friend and co-worker, John Crabtree. He's the Director of Training at Great Commission Collective. John, what's happening in the northern end of Indianapolis?
Oh, my goodness, Marty. Things are happening like you would not believe. We're moving into spring, man. Everybody here has been praying for that. So
that's awesome. Now I'm looking, I can see out your window and it looks like snow. Is that snow or is that just like bright sunlight reflecting?
It is not snow. It is bright sunlight reflecting, which we have been praying for, my friend.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's almost like being in Texas last week.
Well, the first part of the week, at least. Last part of the week, it felt like Indiana.
That's true. That is so true. Well, hey, thanks for stopping by for a few minutes today. I wanted to get an opportunity for people who don't know you well. Most of our listeners will have at least seen you and seen your name. But not everybody knows your background and not everybody knows the extent of what you do at GCC. And so I want to explore some of that today, as well as exploring some of the options that people have on our Learning Center. So start off by talking about who is John Crabtree?
Wow, what a question. Yeah, I am married, happily married to my wife, Vicki. We've been married for 44 years. We have 3 kids and 12 grandkids with 1 on the way. So we like to call it a baker's dozen. Anyway, 2 of the 3 kids are in the Indy area, and then 1 is in the Seattle area, getting ready to move to Florida. So, that's kind of the personal side of things. And I have been a pastor for 25 plus years. Also, have been involved with Christian higher education, both on the administration side of things as a dean, and then on the faculty side of things as a professor. So it's given me a great opportunity to put those 2 things together in the role that I'm playing right now at the Great Commission Collective, which is exciting.
Awesome. Well, I just want to say, as I've often said to you, for those of you who are listening that are in grandparent range, if you don't have any grandkids yet, it's because John is hogging them all. He's got like, he can build an ark with all the grandkids that he has. I'm righteously envious of you.
We worked really hard at that.
Oh, man. So you've been with GCC for how long now?
A couple of years, coming up on 2 years, I think it is. Okay. I started in August of 2020, right in the middle of the COVID.
Okay. And what are your primary responsibilities? I'm interested to know this, actually. So I'm going to go ahead and ask you what your primary responsibilities are.
Primarily, my title is Director of Training. So that includes giving direction and oversight to all of the training that takes place in the Great Commission Collective. And in addition to that, I'm also working in the strengthening leaders side of our mission. Our mission, as you well know, is planting churches and strengthening leaders. And so we're partnering together with churches to see healthy elder teams plant and build flourishing churches. So the side of the equation for strengthening leaders is something that I have kind of taken on at the beginning of this year, and I'm excited about that.
So part of what you oversee and help guide related to GCC has to do with online learning, and specifically with our Learning Center, the website that we have that you oversee and is designed to help churches that are involved with GCC fulfill their role in helping both the church and GCC fulfill our goals. So explain a little bit about what's on the Learning Center, and then we'll move into how it can be accessed and what's the benefit for the churches.
Yeah, we believe that leaders are strengthened through 5 core services. Training is one of those, with cohorts and workshops and micro conferences, coaching, online studies, webinars, et cetera, et cetera. We also believe that they're strengthened through resources that both are created and curated, and then also through assessments like the church health assessment and the leader health assessment. And so what we have done is we have this online platform for outcome-based learning that houses these types of learning opportunities for people in our collective, for leaders to go online any time of the day. I mean, they can access that 24/7 and find these types of training opportunities that will help them as we strengthen leaders.
So what's currently available? We're in the lead conference, as we were jokingly talking about Texas weather. That's why we were in Texas, was for the lead conference. And we just captured a lot of information that's coming. But for a pastor that's listening or an elder that's listening, what's some of the existing content on the Learning Center that when you talk to pastors, you would say like, hey, we'll start here, listen to this or watch this, take notes on this. And then we'll move into like, how can they actually access this content?
Yeah. So primarily what's on the Learning Center at this point is material from the last 2 conferences that we've hosted. Okay. So last year we hosted a plant conference, which focused on church planting. And there were main sessions and workshops that were offered. And all of that is on the Learning Center right now. The last week, we were in San Antonio, as you mentioned, with our lead conference. And again, we had main sessions and we had workshops. And all of that material will be on the Learning Center, I would say probably within 30 days. One of the other exciting things that we did is, coming out of our plant conference last year, Trent Griffith preached a message on the 5 marks of a missional ecosystem. And so this year, what we did was we recorded 15 videos for different church sizes, looking at each one of those marks. And so that material will be on the Learning Center by April 1. That's our deadline. And so I'm excited about that. And pastors should be excited about that also, because I know the heart of pastors. They want to become church planting churches, and this will help them develop that culture.
So a thing that I think is important to bring up is that a lot of the stuff that's on the Learning Center, even if it's under like a pastor elder area, is not really designed just for individual watching and individual consumption. It's really designed for group learning. So a pastor can take, say, the 5 Marks of a Missional Ecosystem series when it's done, pull together a group, or have someone in his church pull together a group. And it expands the way that people think about reaching their neighborhood or what it means to be in a community or something like that. So there's lots of different applications. But the pastor can be helping his people get a larger vision and a broader understanding of what he's trying to do in the church without having to prepare a different class again to teach and then recruit people. So there is that side of it, correct?
That is correct. And one of the features of the Learning Center is that churches can actually set up study groups or groups that they can be in. And as a church within the collective, they can begin to train their people in these contextualized groups So we're really excited about that, and we're going to provide some training on how churches can actually set those types of groups up in the future.
Can a pastor contact you and say, "Hey, I know I want to set up XYZ class at my church to study this. Can you create a module from these 8 videos that are on the Learning Center that I can administrate and keep track of how everybody's doing?" Is that possible?
That is possible.
Okay.
Yeah, and so the pastor can actually set that up himself for his particular church. And that's what's exciting, because they can kind of pick and choose what they need in their context and use the training for that purpose.
So I'm assuming that at some point in the near future, you're going to be doing like a Zoom thing to show, or somebody's going to be doing a Zoom to show pastors how to set those things up for their own churches. That way they can multiply or duplicate it in the future with different options. Is that right?
Yeah, that is right. And that will probably be showing up in April.
Okay.
And in addition to that, Marty, one of the exciting things that we've done, our priority, I don't know if that's necessarily the right word, but we focus a lot on elder teams. Mm-hmm. But we also want to equip church leaders. And so what we've done is we've identified someone who will take responsibility for a ministry area of the church. Let's just say worship. And what that person is doing is putting together a team and looking forward to developing training that will launch in April as well, along with some coaching calls. Looking forward to the fall when we're able to launch cohorts for that specific ministry area. So all of that's coming up, and it's exciting that the Learning Center is going to provide us with those types of opportunities to strengthen leaders in the future.
So now the big question is, how does a person, for collective churches, there's no cost to using the Learning Center, obviously. But a lot of people have not yet registered an account. I guess that's what we would call it, opening an account or registering to use the Learning Center. How does one go about doing that? It's
fairly simple. You go to learningscenter.gccollective.org, and you'll come to a homepage, landing page. And at the top of that page, you'll see a register button. You just click the register button, and that will take you to the registration page where you will enter in some information about you, your church, etc. And that will allow you access to everything that's on the Learning Center itself.
Now, when they register, one of the things that they'll have immediate access to is the 123 Send initiative content. So this was heavily emphasized at the LEAD conference. It's been mentioned since October at the Senior Pastor Wife Retreat. And so we've been kind of slow rolling until we got to LEAD. So go into a little bit of what that's about and why it's important that people get involved with that.
Yeah, 123 Send is our church planting acceleration initiative to help churches become church planting churches, where they will identify one person who will be in a residency for 2 years and in 3 years planting a church. That's the simplified version of 123 Send. And as you well know, coming out of our LEAD conference, we have started a 6-week study that Trevor Peacock is leading on the Am I Called series. And we've developed an Am I Called study guide that will help a pastor walk people through and help them determine whether they're called to ministry or not. And this is so exciting, and it's already started, but we're going to be offering that again later in the year, so that if you miss this time, for sure, you'll be able to pick it up, because it's going to be on the Learning Center itself.
Awesome.
So that's going to be an opportunity for everybody in the collective to participate in. And as you heard at the LEAD conference, we are really excited about the 123 Send initiative.
This is fantastic, John. This is such good stuff, and even the crossover between strengthening leaders and planting churches is important, which is what's happening with 123 Send. Yeah. So, man, I'm excited about what you're doing, and the content that's being produced and the opportunities that gives our pastors and our elders and our churches. and the breadth of content is especially encouraging. So thanks for hanging out, and I want to encourage everyone to check out the things that John's talked about. Register if you haven't gotten registered, and promote registration in your churches. So even if you're not ready to start using the Learning Center in your church, at least people are getting familiar, so that when you start that first class or you have that first study group that you use the Learning Center, it won't be brand new to them. They'll have some familiarity with how the interface works and all that kind of stuff. So man, thanks so much. And if anybody has questions, obviously they can email John at gccollective.org, and he'll be happy to answer your questions.
Thanks, Marty.
Thank you for listening to Launch, the GCC podcast. If you haven't subscribed already, why not take a moment to do that in your favorite podcast app? Also, rate and review the podcast when you get a moment. That helps us with search results, and recommend us to your friends, maybe other pastors that you know who will benefit from the content from this podcast. Also, don't forget to check out our website if you haven't done that already. It's gccollective.org. That's gccollective.org. And there's a lot of helpful information. There's articles. There's how you can join the GCC, whether a church planter or an existing church, and plenty of other content that'll help you grow spiritually and encourage you in your leadership journey.